Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Sanderson Farms Data Dive Show. I want to start off by thanking everybody who joined me on Twitch this morning. Pretty fun show. Went into some research around the winners of the Sanderson Farms dating back to 2015. I also put that out on Twitter and on Instagram. So if you did not come by the show this morning, make sure you check that out at the social media site you prefer. But it was a fun show. Also got into some rookie data, if you will, which that will be the subject for tomorrow's Twitch stream. We'll be focusing heavily on the rookie data. We'll probably be making my rookie rankings, and I say rookie rankings, Corn Ferry Tour grad rankings for the Sanderson Farms tomorrow during the Twitch stream. Probably a little bit of a different time. I'm going to try to do it earlier as I have some lunch plans starting around 11 Eastern. So I'm going to try to get online by about 9:30 a.m. Eastern. And if you aren't able to catch me live at that time, I am hoping to get back online tomorrow in the afternoon or evening on Twitch as well. But give me a follow at the links in the description, whether that is directly via Twitch or the social media site you prefer, Twitter, Instagram. I always give a notification when I go live. But again, thanks to everybody who showed up this morning, to everyone who followed over on Twitch. I really do appreciate it. But we are ready to dig into the data for the Sanderson Farms this week. Had a very good show last night, so if you didn't catch that, make sure you check out the YouTube video after tonight's show. Had a lot to get into there. There has been one field change. Sebastian Munoz has withdrawn. Not too unsurprising, coming off the President's Cup. He has played well here. He was a former champion, but after the President's Cup, I imagined he would probably withdraw. So he is out, and Martin Trainer has replaced him in the field. There has also been the 4 open qualifiers. Ben Silverman is one, but the other 3 are escaping me. But we'll get into that. I think that's going to be enough of me rambling. Let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is simply the best tool out there. There are a lot of great tools, a lot of great data and research and content out there. I simply believe Fantasy National is the best. It allows me to do what I do as a statistical-minded person, gives me the information that I need to relay what I can to you. And if you are a member at Fantasy National, you don't have to listen to a moron like me. You can just get all of the data straight at your fingertips and use it however you want. It is going to make you a much better and much smarter gambler and a much better DFS player, simply put. Go check them out. It's well worth your investment. In the description to the videos, there are links to all of my social media that I mentioned earlier. Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, Discord server. However, the Discord server is pretty light. I keep mentioning, but not a lot of activity there. So it's mainly the 3 social media sites, if you will. Give me a follow at those places. Like I said, today I posted some research around the winners of the Sanderson Farms going back to 2015. Wednesday night I will be placing my betting cards on Twitter for the Sanderson Farms, and I do that every Wednesday night after the show for your perusal. That way you can laugh or perhaps get a last minute idea on who to bet, who not to bet, all that good stuff. So give me a follow at the links in the description. And then finally, we're live. Chat's open. After the research last night, I want to hear from you all. Did you take that and use it to put any wagers in this afternoon when the lines came out? Are there any storylines that you think are going to play this week at the Country Club of Jackson? Do you think Sam Burns defends his title? Do you think the trend of first-time winners will come back? All of that good stuff. So jump in chat. Want to hear from you all. But let's do what we're here for. Let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2023 Sanderson Farms. And we start with Fantasy National. And as always, I'm going to have to adjust my camera slightly because it always gets off-centered for whatever reason. Last night we went through a little bit of the data, mainly surrounding the Bermuda putting, in particular Fast and Lightning. These greens have been lightning every round the past 2 years. I would suspect that it will not be different. You might get a round or two of fast, but generally speaking, these are lightning speed bent greens. We looked at a little bit of strokes gain approach. We talked a lot about birdies and bogeys and how this course in this tournament is easy. So we looked around some birdies there, some easy course performance. But tonight we're really going to dig into figuring out what specific ranges of par 3s, par 4s, proximities, of any of that might give us an edge or lead us to believe that particular length of whatever hole is most important. We also talked last night how par 5s are so very, very important, and they are all in one length of par 5s here. But enough of the rambling. Let's do a couple of things as a recap from last night, if you will. First thing, as I mentioned, we're going to go to Bermuda. We're going to go Fast and Lightning, and I will have to expand the time frame as I am defaulting to June 1st right now. I don't want to go so far back in terms of grabbing all of the data or an umbrella, if you will. I want to see who's been playing well recently. Having said that, you can see there's not enough rounds on Fast and Lightning Bermuda that would be significant. So I'm going to go back to January 1st, and that is a lot of the time where the Bermuda tracks come in. At the beginning of the year, the West Coast, much better suited for golf at that time of the year. So again, quite a few rounds for Bermuda, Fast and Lightning. So your top performers since the start of this calendar year on Fast and Lightning Bermuda greens: Sepp Straka, Sam Burns, Brendan Todd, John Hudd, Denny McCarthy, Scott Stallings, Davis Riley, Chesson Hadley, Peter Malnati, and Sam Ryder. Sam Burns, no surprise, he loves Fast Lightning Bermuda greens. You saw it at the President's Cup. He was rolling the rock extremely well. Denny McCarthy, one of the best putters, if not the best putter in the world. Brendan Todd generally loves Bermuda greens as well. So not a whole lot of surprise here with the players you see. Let's go ahead and bring those filters off. Even though on the scorecard the Country Club of Jackson measures to 7,461, we talked last night about how we're not going to use any over 7,400 metrics or long course metrics defined by Fantasy National. And the reason being that, again, according to Fantasy National, the past 2 years, and really past 3 years except for one round, has played to 72 to 7,400. Now, if I had to guess, or as the saying goes, if I were a betting man, which I don't know why you would assume I'm a betting man, but if I were a betting man, then I would venture to say that it's very close to 7,400, but it's not over 7,400 and hasn't played that way in the past 3 years. And even in 2020, there was a round that was less than 7,200. So we're not going to be looking at any over 7,400 metrics this week. And if the course does indeed play to its scorecard yardage, well, I will be a little cold to that, if you will, in my analysis. I'm just going by what I see in the past 3 years hasn't played to over 7,400. So with that, I'm going to go straight into easy. When a round is easy, again, dating back to 1/1/22 to have enough rounds, dating back to 1/1/22, your top performers in rounds that are easy. Seamus Power, Mark Hubbard, Davis Riley, Adams Vincent, David Lipsky, Vincent Whaley, Taylor Moore, JT Poston, Russell Henley, and Andrew Putnam. So already a couple of overlapping names here. I know Davis Riley was here for the putting on Fast and Lightning Bermuda. I feel like Mark Hubbard was close to there, if not in there. Putnam, I'm sure, was close to there. He's generally a good putter on Bermuda. But there you go. There is a couple of metrics that we looked at in terms of a totality last night. And I think that's going to be it for the kind of review of last night. One of the big things that I always look at, and it is my preferred statistic, I just believe it is a bigger indicator of long-term success, is strokes gained approach. And while it is a bit mitigated here because putting is so dominant at the Country Club at Jackson, it's still going to be important. So, in the past 36 rounds dating back to June 1st, your top strokes gained approach players here at the Sanderson Farms this week: Russell Henley, Shez Reavie, Lee Hodges, Mark Hubbard, Brendan Steele, Adam Schenk, Alex Smalley, Chesson Hadley, Luke List, and Stefan Jaeger. Again, some more overlap. Hubbard, I know, has been on 2 of the 3. Might have been on the putting as well. To think Luke List and putting is just hilarious. Chesson Hadley was here for the putting, and now for the strokes gained approach. So strokes gained approach used to be kind of his bugaboo, and if he is able to hit his irons to go with the putting, Chesson Hadley is somebody to start looking out for early on in this PGA Tour season. Let's see. I think that honestly might be it for this page view here in Fantasy National. Reason being, strokes gained around the green just is not an important factor here at the Country Club of Jackson at all. It's just not. Any short game lean that the course has is all in putting, as you can see. So let's go ahead and start moving into some of these more specific views here in Fantasy National. Let's start with birdies and bogeys. And we spent some time last night talking about how birdies are the main proponent here at the Country Club of Jackson as opposed to avoiding bogeys. And when I say birdies, I'm going to use birdies or better. Eagles do happen here. They're not as common as you would think for a course that plays easy. So therefore, there's just not a whole lot of reason to look at eagles specifically by themselves. But I will bring up last year's leaderboard, and we looked at this last night as well. The top birdies gained players, I think, is Cameron Young getting cut off. Yeah. So you've got 2 players here, and I apologize, it's the camera settings that cut off the screen. Your first and second place performers: Sam Burns gained 8.4 in birdies, 9.4 in Cameron Young, who finished second. But you can see this just long list of players who were positive in terms of birdies gained. The first player that's negative in terms of birdies tied for 31st. So it's just a whole lot of birdies. And not only that, I will sort on the birdies gained. Cameron Young and Sam Burns, the 9.4 and 8.4, were the 2 highest birdie gains that week. But, I mean, you can see, you got a 7.4, you got a myriad of 4.4s, a lot of 3.4s. Whereas the bogeys, you have a couple of 5s up here, and there's a lot of 4s and 3s, but you still had quite a few high numbers in the birdies gained than the bogeys avoided. Let's check 2021 and 2020, as it will show you the same kind of deal here. Again, Sergio and Peter Malnati getting cut off, but both of them are at 7.3. You got to come down to, well, look at this, convenient for ties. Look at this, Charles Schwartzel tied for 32 or tied for 32nd. No one above him was negative in terms of birdies gained. So every single player in the top 32 were positive in birdies gained. You cannot say that about bogeys. Now, they weren't very far into the bogeys, but they were still negative. So that's 2 straight years of a whole lot of strong correlation in terms of birdies. And then the year prior, 2020, the year Sebastian Munoz won, it looks to be a bit more balanced than the other two. However, Sungjae and Bronson Burgoon, the 2 names that are getting cut off here, they're both sitting at 8.8, and then you can see 7.8 down. The top bogeys there's only one that's at 5.9, and then it comes all the way down to 4.9 and so on. So still, even the birdies gained in 2020 is more top heavy in terms of the amount gained by some of these upper finishing leaderboard players. So we're going to just be focusing a whole lot on birdies this week. So let's come back to this year's field. We're going to take a look at 2 different things, birdies or better just straight up, and then I'm going to use birdies or better when it's easy. I use this quite a bit to see who plays easy courses well, who isn't, I don't want to say isn't afraid to go low, but will go low, especially when the conditions are correct. So with no other filters, and I'm double checking myself, with no other filters, your top birdies or better gained players since June 1st. Emiliano Grillo, Trey Mullanex, and Adam Svensson are all tied for first. Then you have Sam Burns, John Huh, Stefan Jaeger, Thomas Detry, JT Poston, Scott Piercy, Michael Gligic, and Nick Hardy are your top 11, 2 of them being tied for 10th. And you can see just how closely aligned they are with birdies. You know, the 3 tops here are all 3 tops in the birdies. Really, Scott Piercy might be the one notable exception, but he is number 1 in eagles. That's what is bringing him up in the birdies or better. Let's see, somebody who might be getting hurt a little bit, maybe Taylor Moore. He's not the biggest eagle guy. Will get birdies in bunches, but he's not going to get a bunch of eagles. Same with Ben Griffin, perhaps. So a couple of good things there, but I am pretty confident that I'm going to be using the easy filter in my mixed condition model with this metric. So again, just to ensure I have enough rounds to make the data significant. When a round is easy, your top birdies or better gained players: Davis Riley, Adam Svensson, Michael Thompson, Emiliano Grillo, Stefan Jaeger, Seamus Power, Trey Mullanex, Taylor Moore, Vincent Whaley, Peter Monati, and Russell Henley. Quite a bit of overlap here, which you would expect, but there are some new names. Michael Thompson is a new one, from going from no filter to easy. Vincent Whaley, I believe, is new. Russell Henley is new. So you can see how a subtle change in a filter or a statistic can yield different results. So I always like to make sure I look at the statistic that I want and the filters that I am confident will be in play. And I am very confident that the Sanderson Farms is going to play easy. Every single round was easy last year, and you haven't had a difficult round since 2018. So it might play to, close to average, but it's certainly on the easier end of average. So I am very, very confident that it will play, at least in some form or fashion, easy. It generally does. So with that, There is a look at your top birdies or better gained players when a round is easy. Pardon me, let me make sure I have Twitch chat up. And again, feel free to jump in, ask any questions throughout an observation perhaps that you have made early on in your research this week. I would love to go over it, but I'm showing you what I have seen Sunday or yesterday and today. With that, I think that's probably going to do it for this entire page view. It's going to be solely focused on birdies gained or birdies better gained as opposed to bogeys avoided. We looked at a little bit of this last night, the fairways and greens view, and to be honest, there's just not a whole lot here that jumps off the page that signifies that it will be important. So let's go ahead and bring up last year's statistics. If there's anything at all, it might be driving distance. We talked about that a little bit last night when we went to Microsoft Excel, and we'll go back there towards the end of the show tonight again. So like Sam Burns here, he gained 11 strokes, good drives gained, and then greens 11.9. But some of these numbers just, aren't very large. Hey P, how you doing? How was your weekend? Thanks for jumping in chat via YouTube. Hope everything went well and that you did better than I did with the President's Cup. I had enough speed, enough JT to keep me afloat, but as I mentioned last night on the show and then this morning on Twitch, my lineups were just kind of underwhelming. Yeah, absolutely. All is well. Thanks for jumping in chat. Drive safely. No need to talk in chat while you're driving, but thanks for jumping in. Appreciate it. But we talked a little bit about last night how the driving distance could matter. We'll take a look at that very extensively in Excel about the possibility of some outliers. Greens, maybe. But honestly, if you were to sort on each of these metrics, Sam Burns was your leader in good drives gained and probably in greens and regulation. But, you've got a middling here. You've got a clunker of a made cut here. Some more double-digit finishes. There's not a whole lot of strong correlation here in the good drives gained. If you look at greens, again, you have a missed cut fairly high up here in terms of performance in greens, but does not translate to leaderboard success. Now, it is quite a bit more top heavy here. You have 4 straight top 10s, 3 of those in the top 5s, but I don't feel like there is a strong correlation year over year with greens and good drives and all that. You can see driving distance here in 2021 was much more important than it was in 2022. And if we look at good drives gained, you've got, 4 players in the top 11 that were negative in good drives gained. 3 were negative in terms of greens. But your winner was probably the leader in greens and regulation. Good drives, he was 3rd in terms of good drives. But again, sorting on good drives, you got some success here. Top 25, a top 30, winner, top 5. But you got some missed cuts. You got some pretty high double-digit finishes. That's not a lot of strong correlation. Greens, a little bit stronger, but still, you've still got some more higher end single digits, some double digits here. I just don't see a whole lot. But the distance, you had 3 straight T6s. You do have a clunker from Will Gordon. But you have your winner, another T6, a solo 4th or T4. Perhaps distance could be something. Let's look at 2020 and see if we can't get a feel for something that sticks out. So again, good drives gained, Your leader was 9.1, Bo Hogue, who is a clunker of a made cut at T54. Now, Brian Harmon, top 15, Harris English. But you come down after these, 4 players here? I mean, there is nothing. You've got a top 30. Sorry, I'm cutting that one off. Top 30, 2 middlings, a clunker, and 2 miscuts from those. Then you look at the greens. Again, Bo Hogue was your leader, T54. You've got Riley, Grillo, middling finishes. Wise, middling finish. Just don't see a whole lot here. Distance in 2020 did not matter at all. You can see the 4 miscuts here. But your winner was third in terms of distance. So we'll take a look and scrutinize that in Microsoft Excel quite a bit. I think distance might be something, but we'll have to see. So with that, let's go ahead and go back to this year's field. Let's look at driving distance. Again, this is kind of a hunch on my end. But since June 1st, and again with no filters, since June 1st, your longest drivers of the golf ball since June 1st, Joseph Bramlett, Wyndham Clark, Trey Mullanex, Callum Tarrant, Thomas Detry, Ryan Brim, Luke List, Nick Hardy, Brandon Matthews, and Kevin Tway. Well, Trey Mullanex has played this event very, very well, so that's comforting to see at least. Wyndham Clark, I don't remember if he has or not. So this is the strokes gained total, or what Fantasy National calls the tournament history page view. Let's just search for Wyndham Clark. No, he has not, as you can see. But Mullanex has. He is right here, tied for 5th last year. He did miss the cut in 2019, withdrew in 2018, so he does have some success here. Harris English has popped up on some of these metrics and is up high in terms of driving distance. Let's see. Luke List, always going to be a high up there in driving distance. I'm pretty high on Thomas Detry this week, as I was at the Fortinet. He really came through for me, was very unique. He is someone that will hit the golf ball a decent ways, as you can see here. Somebody to think about. So there's your top driving distance players. If we want to take a look at greens, which I think is going to be the most important of the metrics that we've talked about other than driving distance, your top greens and regulation players since June 1st, Adam Long, Brendan Steele, Grayson Sigg, Russell Henley, Lee Hodges, Hayden Buckley, Chesson Hadley, Milano Grillo, Adam Schenk, Matthias Schwab, and Brandon Wu. Now, one of the reasons why I don't think greens are going to be that big of a deal, the green and regulation percentage here is nearly 70%. The average on tour is 65 or close to 66. So if greens are easier to hit, then if more players are going to hit them, you're not gaining an advantage there. And you might think about driving accuracy. Well, the reason this one might not be it is this course is intentionally set up as fast and firm. The rough isn't penal, and the players know that, so they just go ahead and hit driver, knowing that if they do end up in the rough, it doesn't prevent them from trying to hit the green. They don't just have to advance it. And quite honestly, that's another reason why the driving accuracy is lower here, is that you have so much run out, you'll find the first cut of rough because the course is so firm. Distance, proximity. Now maybe proximity could be something, but again, we looked at that a little bit last night. We'll do it more tonight. I don't see much in the proximity department. So honestly, I don't see a whole lot on this page view in Fantasy National that we're going to want to look at. I mean, not even scrambling, because scrambling here is easier than other courses or other PGA Tour events. And this course is easy, so if you're having to scramble, you're losing even more ground to the field. So what I'm going to do, I am going to bring back the easy metric. I will look at greens, and I do want to look at driving distance when it's easy. I do not know if they are going to be used in my final mixed condition model Wednesday, but I do want to see them. So, dating back to January 1st, when a round is easy, your top greens and regulation players: Taylor Moore, Russell Henley, Mark Hubbard, Davis Riley, Lucas Glover, Grayson Sigg, Andrew Putnam, Ryan Armour, Lee Hodges, and Stefan Jaeger. So again, more of these same names here. Davis Riley has seemingly been on every single one of them. He's going to be very high in driving distance. He won't be top 10, but he'll be up there in driving distance as well. First time I think we've said Ryan Armour. He is a former champion here at the Sanderson Farms. Lucas Glover, first time we've said him. He'll hit greens when it's easy. But Taylor Moore, Russell Henley, Mark Hubbard, these names have been popping up consistently. Even Stefan Jaeger has popped up a few times. Now, when a round is easy, your top driving distance players in those conditions: Joseph Bramlett, Luke List, Wyndham Clark, Ryan Brim, Callum Tarrant, Trey Mullanex, Sam Burns, Brendan Steele, Scott Stallings, Gary Woodland, Nick Hardy, and Patrick Rogers. So one of the first times we've said Sam Burns tonight, even though he is the defending champion, a lot of things set up well for him. He was there for the putting, absolutely, but he wasn't there in stroke gain approach. He wasn't there in the birdies, I don't think. So he's here for distance. Now, Trey Mullanex, he's always going to be very high when there's distance involved. Wyndham Clark, Luke List. First time I think we've said Gary Woodland. Nick Hardy, Patrick Rogers. So interesting names to think about if you are going to agree with me in the premise that driving distance could matter here, and I think it will. Let's move to. I'm going to skip proximity for now. Let's move to par threes. And when we looked at this last night, we saw that in the top 10s and the top 5s, the par threes kind of got mitigated in importance. So you had 12 and a half here in the top 5s. Top 10s were 14 and a half almost, or 0.145. But when you go to the winners, they really jumped in significance, and the par 4 shrunk. So that led me to do a little bit of research today in Microsoft Excel, and if you were here this morning on Twitch, this will be a little bit of a recap, or you'll have seen this before, but for those who haven't seen it, let's take a look at some par 3 metrics here. And I don't think there will be any specific range, especially because, I'll set this back to the top 10s, the par 3s are evenly distributed. I'll say evenly. There's 2 between 200 and 225, and then 1 each from 150 to 200 broken out in half there. So if we look at the scorecard, 181, that's pretty darn close to staying in the 175 to 200. I would think it might sneak into the 150 to 175, but I doubt it. 214, pretty much right in the middle of the 200 to 225. 223 could play long, but I don't think it does very often. And then the 168 maybe touches into the 175 to 200 a day or two, but overall they're pretty evenly distributed. And when we go to Microsoft Excel later in the show, you'll see that there's no particular range of par 3s that are extremely important. So when we look at last year's leaderboard in particular, you do have some very strong par 3 performances up near the top of the leaderboard. Sam Burns looks like he was second. Henrik Norlander, 6.5. I think he was the leader. Yeah, so Norlander at 6.5, Sam Burns and Matthew Wolff 5.5, and then so on down. This is pretty strong in terms of upper tier or top heavy success. Now you do have Cohen Trolio, who missed a cut. Then you have some more missed cuts down here. But you have a 6.5 that was the leader in the par threes. So as we move across, you got a 3.2 here. You have a 3.1 here. And you have a 3.2 here. So it's getting pretty evenly distributed. And those are just by the top performances. So for example, 200 to 225, you've got a few 3.2s up here. 175 to 200, you only have one at 3.1, and then you come down to the 2s and the 1s. But these aren't the same players. You can see that the names are changing. And then 150 to 175, you've got two 3.2s and then on down. So there's not really a overarching or extremely important range of par threes that jumps out, at least from last year's leaderboard. We'll go to 2021. More of the same. In fact, you had a 6.1, and that leader was CT Pan. In the three metrics, he goes 1.9, 1.3, 0.8. Again, fairly evenly distributed. If I sort on just the pure leaderboard, Sergio was your winner. He goes 0.9, 0.3, 1.8. Again, pretty evenly distributed. But the par threes are important. Keegan and Norlander did not play them well, but you had the majority of guys play them pretty well. And then one more year again, 2020, just to give us a nice 3-year sample. Munoz was actually negative. Sungjae was very negative in the par threes. But if you sort on the par threes, for the most part, still fairly strong. You had Michael Gellerman middling, Adam Schenk was middling, and Corey Connors had a missed cut. But a top 10, a top 5, a top 15, a top 10, and a top 15. And then once you get past Corey Connors' missed cut, you have a run here of more top 25s. Sorry, that highlighted everything. I did not want that. You have another run of top 25s here. So par threes will be important. How important? That's up for debate. But I think it would be wise to look at some par three. And I'm just going to look at strokes gained par three. So no other filters. I'm going to bring this back in to, I said September. I meant June. June 1st. And I'm keeping it consistent. You might be asking yourself, why June 1st? I want to go back far enough to where players might have 36 rounds, but I don't want to go too far back in the sense that I'm going to cut a lot of rounds off. And also June 1st conveniently happened to be the start of a tournament, the Memorial. So I'm capturing all of a tournament as I go back. So that's mainly the biggest reason. It's what I used for the Fortinet 2 weeks ago. I'm going to continue to use this more than likely until some of these Korn Ferry Tour grads get enough rounds under their belt that I can just use, since the start of the PGA Tour season. Anyway, your top par 3 performers since June 1st. Austin Cook, Stefan Jaeger, Chris Stroud, Adam Schenk, JT Poston, Paul Haley II. Again, note he's only got 4 rounds. These are the Fortinet rounds, which he played very well, but do take that with a little bit of grain of salt. He's only got 4 rounds. Mark Hubbard, Ben On, the same. He's only got 4 rounds. Russell Henley and Mac Hughes and Taylor Moore. So I skipped Munoz. Again, he has withdrawn. So your top, I think it's 11 because of ties. Austin Cook, Stefan Jaeger, Chris Stroud, Adam Schenk, JT Poston, Paul Haley II, Mark Hubbard, Ben On, Russell Henley, Mac Hughes, and Taylor Moore are your top par 3 performers. We move to par 4s. And by the course breakdown, you would think that 400 to 450 will be the most important range of par 4s here. You do have a drivable par 4. You've got a couple others that are longer. Well, you come to the leaderboard, and we'll see if that holds up. So your winner last year, Sam Burns, your defending champion, did not play the par fours extremely well at all. It was only a 2.5, and it was very evenly distributed. 0.4, 1.6, and 1. You look at Andrew Landry, who looks like he led the field in par 4 performance. His was more in the 450 to 500, but there's only 2 on the scorecard that measure to there. If we sort by performance just on these specific lengths, 2.5 on the short one, there are none on the scorecard that measure 350 to 400, yet you've got quite a bit of data here. So that's when tees and pins get moved around and all that stuff. So again, you have a 2.5, you have a 3.4, a 5.6 in the 400 to 450, and a 6 in the 450 to 500. So interesting to note, we saw on the scorecard there supposedly is one at 500 plus. It is, where is it at on here? 505. There we go. Hole 18. Says it's 505, but you come here. Last year it never played above 500. So what I'm seeing here is that the 400 to 450 and the 450 to 500 would be the strongest of the two, but how much is it going to matter? Let me tell you, for par, this looks like strong correlation. For par 4s, this isn't strong. This isn't very strong. You've got a top 30, a middling from Chris Kirk, a middling to clunker from Chesson Hadley down here. Like, you don't have any miscuts, but it is fairly weak in terms of correlation with these par 4s. 400 to 450, roughly the same. You do have a pure clunker in Lucas Glover and a miscut from Hudson Swafford. 450 to 500, miscut from Curtis Thompson way up here, Adam Shank. So not a whole lot there. 2021, come back, look for some par 4s. A little bit stronger, I suppose, but again, nothing that jumps off the page. You've got a 3.8, an 8, and a 7.7. So the most strokes gained are in these two ranges of par 4s. Okay. As if we move to the par 4 tab, or par 4 page view here in Fantasy National, I'll sort on par 4s, but we're going to focus mainly on these two over here. So your top par 4 performers, just in general, since June 1st, Chesson Hadley, Adam Long, Adams Vincent, Emiliano Grillo, Andrew Putnam, Denny McCarthy, Brendan Todd, Martin Laird, Thomas Detry, Ben Griffin, and JT Poston. Now, of those players, the ones that are solid in both 400 to 450 and 450 to 500, you have Chesson Hadley, 7th and 27th. Grillo, I guess, 37th and 6th. Denny McCarthy, 11th and 17th. That makes a lot of sense. He has played this event extremely well. Other than that, that's all of the players that would be in the top 10 in total par 4s. Now, you have some others here, like Robbie Shelton was very good from the length of these two par 4s at the Fortinet, but again, only 4 rounds. Same with Vincent Norman. Very good at the length of these par 4s at the Fortinet. Russell Henley is good at both of these. Austin Smotherman is good at both of these lengths. So there are a few names to think about as you move forward in your research with par 4s this week. And a subtle reminder, well, now it's not so subtle, I will be doing rookie rankings, making my mixed condition model for the Korn Ferry Tour grads and all that stuff for the Sanderson Farms tomorrow on Twitch. So I hope you consider stopping by. I'm going to say tentatively 9:30 a.m. Eastern. Normally it's 10:30. I'm pushing it an hour earlier since I have lunch plans, and then we'll hopefully be back later on in the afternoon. But there's a look at the par fours. I noticed that we've been going for quite a while, and I still want to hit Microsoft Excel. So page fives, par fives here at Sanderson Farms can be summed up very, very easily. 550 to 600. You got a 4.8 as your top here. You do have a 3.7 in the 500 to 550, but again, no par fives measured to here on the scorecard. And then 600 to 650 is a 2.3 max. How much does it correlate? Well, I've sorted on the 550 to 600. You do have a miscut from Patrick Rogers, but the top 6 here, all top 20'd. Then you come to the middling Davis Thompson, the miscut Patrick Rogers. You've got quite a few more very good performances. And it's that way throughout historically at the Country Club of Jackson, Again, sorted on this 550 to 600. 4 very strong performances, all top 10s. More strong finishes after a middling and miscut. So it is just extremely important, and will emphasize it more in Excel. So your top performers on par fives, 550 to 600 yards since June 1st. Brandon Wu, Emiliano Grillo, Stefan Jaeger, Joseph Bramlett, Callum Tarrant, Luke List, Patrick Rogers, Kevin Streelman, Ben Taylor, and Nick Hardy. Again, Ben Taylor with only 4 rounds, so take that with a bit of grain of salt. Robbie Shelton's up here. He was there for the par fours, and now the length of the par fives. Ben On, Davis Thompson. So, all right. I'm going to bring this back to, I'm actually going to set it at the proximity in case we want to look at it. But I'm going to bring us now to Microsoft Excel. So don't mind me as I talk to myself and make sure I bring up exactly what I want. All right, so let me go to this tab here. If you are new to the show, let me explain what this is. If you are returning, then let me give you a refresher. This here is taking any full field event if the course has been consistent throughout the PGA Tour season. And in fact, I need to remove the CJ Cup because that was just last year. But anyway, so the Sanderson Farms has been at the Country Club of Jackson since 2015, so it's consistent. I am gathering all of the top 30 performers each year and aggregating and averaging their metrics. So what this is telling you is that at the Sanderson Farms, strokes gained off the tee is about 7/100ths less important than the average full field course. Why do I do full field course? Well, like the Tournament of Champions only has 30, 35, so that would skew the numbers. The Masters only has about 80 to 90, that skews it. BMW. The courses that rotate, the PGA Championship, the U.S. Open, where to go? The Corrales, we don't get that data. Like I would need to get rid of the Summit Club, the CJ Cup, but that is why I want to compare apples to apples. Full field course that has been consistent on the PGA Tour. This is what this is. This is a comparison of all of these metrics. We did this for the Fortinet 2 weeks ago. You can see around the green and putting was so important there. Well, here at Sanderson Farms, it's all putting. All putting. Distance looks to be a little bit of a factor. Good drives, slightly more important. It's not fairways, and greens are about average. Speaking to the birdies and bogeys, birdies are 2/3 of a stroke more important than the average full field course. But where this really comes into play are these par 3s and 4s and 5s. And it's saying that the par 3s are extremely important, the par 4s are extremely important, and then the par fives here are extremely important. Well, it's not really true. So let me show you. I went ahead and highlighted anything that is an outlier. So I'll just show you this first one. For example, the off the tee here, you've got anything between 1.25 and 1.41. That's very, very consistent year over year. But in 2018, which is the last year I'm going back gathering data, I go back 5 years, you only got a 0.66. So that is clearly an outlier. It does not match the other four. So let me remove these outliers that I have identified throughout the various years. And honestly, it looks like 2019 was just an anomaly of a year in total. But once I remove, gosh dang it, once I remove these outliers, there's a couple over here off screen that you don't see. Once I remove these outliers, let's see how much they change. So off the tee now comes to 600ths more important as opposed to 700ths less important. Is it a big factor in the grand scheme of things? No. It's still roughly around course average. But it is a change. The putting is still the big factor. Driving distance actually increases in terms of importance. It goes to 9.73. Good drives gained was positive. Now it's less important by 0.2. It was a very high outlier. So that's changed. I don't know how much we're going to do with off the tee, maybe 5% in the final mixed condition model. Haven't decided. But this is one of the reasons why I think driving distance will play a factor, is that there was an outlier that was causing this number to come down. So I think distance is going to be a factor. Birdies still more important than bogeys avoided, and a lot more important than the average full field course. Par threes were at 0.4 more important. Now they're down to 1/10. And none of these ranges of par threes really jump out as extremely important. So it's just par threes in total. We saw that the par fours were something to the effect of 0.7. Now they're exactly course average, or 100th above course average. There was a huge outlier in there. If there's a range of par fours, it looks like it's the drivable one, 0 to 350. But there's only one hole that plays to that yardage on the scorecard, and only one hole that'll reasonably play to that yardage on the scorecard. Do you want to put a whole lot of emphasis on one hole or 4 holes over a 4-day tournament? No, I would not advise it. So if anything, we'll look at a little bit of par fours, but the numbers say it doesn't really come into play. They are mitigated here in terms of importance. However, come to the par fives, they were lessened in terms of importance. They were in the 7/10. They're still basically 3/10. But look at that number there. I will highlight it in green. I'll bold it. I'll italicize it. I'll make it bigger. That number is huge. 2/3 of a stroke more important here than the average full field course. Just right in line with the Houston Open at Memorial Park. Same with the Corrales, another longer course. Oh, I'm sorry, no, Valspar. It is not as long of a course, but all the par fives there measure to this length at the Valspar. So you can see just how important this range of par fives is compared to other PGA Tour courses. So we're going to put a lot of emphasis on this, a lot of emphasis on the putting, since it's 2/3 of a stroke more important as well. Let's look at the proximities. If there is any proximities that matter, honestly, I think it might be either the 75 to 100 or the 200 plus. But I don't feel great about either one. If it's 200 plus, it's because the players are going for the greens in 2 on the par fives, which makes a lot of sense. But in the course breakdown, let me go back to Fantasy National. I'm hoping that the vision isn't skewed. It is. Shucks. All right. Again, quickly coming to the course breakdown, like this approach shot distribution, yes, the most common approach shot is the 200 plus at 22%, but a lot of that is coming from guys going for the green too. Now, you would think that perhaps it would be the 100 to 125, perhaps the 125 to 150, but again, I'm going to go hopefully skew it for the last time. You look at those two ranges, they're negative in terms of importance. All three of these are negative in terms of importance. So I don't know how much proximity is going to play a factor. I don't know. Something else we can perhaps think about moving forward, putting from 10 to 15 feet. A quarter of a shot more important. I saw that earlier today as well. So maybe that's something that you want to think about moving forward, is putters from 10 to 15 feet. Not sure if I'm going to put it in my final mixed condition model, but it's something that I'm definitely going to factor in or take into consideration. I shouldn't say factor in, take into consideration. So there's a look at the Sanderson Farms of the Country Club at Jackson from a course view. Now let me make sure I bring all these back, because I will forget. Because I slightly forget things. Now, the last thing I want to do is bring you to the early look file, is what I call it, but this is a workbook or file that shows performance specifically at the Country Club of Jackson and where that performance has taken place. For example, Anders Albertson, he's played one time in the past 5 years. He finished 5th. He gained 10.5 strokes on approach that week. Whereas somebody like Denny McCarthy, he has played this event 5 times in the past 5 years. He's got an average finish of 28th. He's only missed the cut once. He's averaged gaining 3.8 strokes putting those 5 years. So that's how this spreadsheet is working. And let's sort on a few of these metrics that we think are going to be important. Let's take a look at off the tee really quickly. See if that could be something that some of these players are playing well on. So you've got Trey Mullanex, who's played it okay. Taylor Moore, Sam Burns. Albertson was good in his one time. Streelman has played this event very, very well. Has been high in strokes gained off the tee. Thompson, Grillo. Okay. Let's look at putting. That is just the be all end all here at the Country Club of Jackson. So strokes gained putting. Who's been the best putter year over year here? Well, Mackenzie Hughes gained 6 in his 1 year. Nicholas Lindheim 5.2 in his 2 years. But you see, I mean, this heavy volume of green and the success that these players have had. CT Pan, T11 and T12. Nick Watney has played it well. Joel Damon, even though he's averaged a 51st finish, he's still 2 for 2, has not missed a cut. Denny McCarthy, Adam Shank, 4 for 5, average finish of a 37th. It's pretty strong. Seamus Power, average finish of a top 60. When you talk about, that doesn't sound good, but when you talk about a 4-year average, that's not bad. Peter Malnati, he's missed the cut once in 5 years. He has put these greens extremely well. Stefan Yeager, who popped on a whole lot of the metrics earlier, 3 for 4 in making the cut. Average finish of a top 50. Strong. Let's sort on driving distance. Let's see who has been better here. Oh shit. Mullanex again. Sam Burns. Wyndham Clark hasn't played it the best, but he's generally up here anyway in terms of driving distance. Scott Stallings, Taylor Moore again, Stuart Sink, Keegan Bradley. So you get a little bit more of these higher finishes, or I should say worse finishes, with the driving distance. So maybe not as important. Clearly not as important as the putting and perhaps off the tee. Let's take a look at it. Just a couple more things because we're getting close on time, if not running a little bit over. Birdies gained. We talked about birdies versus bogeys tonight. So here's the birdies gained. In fact, this might be easier to sort out or filter out the guys who have only played it once. Let's do that. So CT Pan, higher in birdies than bogeys. Ryan Armour, a former champion here, higher in the birdies. McCarthy, Burns, Malnati, Seamus Power. Now Watney is slightly higher in the bogeys. Stuart Sink's been more in the bogeys, but Dylan Fratelli, who's played this event fairly well, 3 for 4 with an average of a 52nd. He's more birdies, even. So you can see the importance of birdies versus the bogeys. And there's the players that have gained birdies at a very good rate over their career, or in the past 5 years here at the Sanderson Farms. A couple more. Let's look at par 3s in general, and then I want to do the par 5s, 550 to 600. So par 3s, let's see who's been playing these well. Stuart Sink's played them well. CT Pan's played them well here. Streelman, Martin Laird. Yeah, Andrew Putnam hadn't played the best here. Sabatini has. Dirty McGurdy has. Okay. Then lastly, let's take a look at these par 5s, 550 to 600. And we'll round out the show on that. And I'll bring it over to the far left for you. 550 to 600. So Henrik Norlander, he T4'd both of the past 2 years and then had a pretty bad miscut the other time. Hayden Buckley, Nicholas Leinhart, Trey Mullanex, who's popped on quite a few of the filters tonight. Nick Watney's played this event well. JT Poston, Griot, English, CT Pan. So I feel pretty good about those metrics being the ones that we want to focus this week at the Sanderson Farms. I'll bring you back to the average finish, bring in the guys that have only played it once in case you want to see that. Something that I did 2 weeks ago and I want to do every week moving forward, pardon me as I get these files up. I want us to take a look and see what I did this past year at the Sanderson Farms. So in case you are fairly new to me and my content, I started this in 2021 at the Memorial, so I didn't have a full season when I started. So now with a full season of metrics, or of performance I should say, of making mixed condition models, like we assessed my performance at the Fortinet. Let's look at what I did for the Sanderson Farms last year, and you can see I hit Sam Burns. He was number 1 in my rankings. And he finished first. I did pretty darn well. My top 10, only 2 missed the cut. He had a lot of pretty good finishes. So I feel like I got this one pretty good. I had 20% on Fast Bermuda. Probably need to increase or add the Lightning. I had 15% in approach. That seems like that should be lower. The metrics just don't back that up. Birdies are better, easy to par. Had that. I had a lot of percentage in it. I had a lot of percentage in the par 5s, 550 to 600. And that played out fairly well. Strokes gained total, easy to par. I don't know how much I'm going to use strokes gained total anymore this year. So that's 10% that I'll probably get back in this year's mixed condition model. But you can see the emphasis on easy to par. This one's wrong. I put 10% in off the tee over 7,400 yards. We're not going to look at anything over 7,400 yards because the course hasn't played that the past 3 years. So here's 20% of a mixed condition model I'm getting back. Probably another 10% I'm getting back here because I'm just going to focus on this length of par fives. So there's 35% here in a mixed condition model that I'm going to reassess, distribute across different metrics and filters. But I was pretty spot on. I really don't try to be arrogant, but I was pretty spot on with Sam Burns, number one player, finished first. Hoffman, he had been so blistering hot in the summer with his irons and all that. He still made the cut, like Will Z, Aaron Wise, these players played well. So I feel like this was a pretty strong mixed condition model. So I'm going to emulate quite a bit of this, and I've got 35% to play around with. So I do want to make sure that I look at my performance last year, or at least show it on the show. That way you can see what I did last year, what I'm going to change. I did want to make sure I brought this up. I'm going to try to remember to have these files up moving forward. This is the first year that I am able to do this, so I forgot tonight. But anyway, that is where I was in terms of approaching the Sanderson Farms last year. Looks like it played out pretty well. Now I will leave you on this workbook so you can see the players who have played it often, played it well, and so on. Now that's going to do it for the Data Dive show for the Sanderson Farms. Reminder that I will be on Twitch tomorrow morning. We'll say 9:30 Eastern. I will be doing my Korn Ferry Tour grad rankings, going and thinking about what metrics I can gather with Korn Ferry Tour data, try to develop a rankings for those players that are in the field this week at the Sanderson Farms. We'll be doing a whole lot of scrutiny on which metrics and which filters to apply to those metrics. We'll probably be going back and looking at the file I just showed, last year's mixed condition model, see how well it did, where we think we can adjust some of these percentages, all that stuff. So I really hope you consider dropping by on Twitch tomorrow morning. P, thanks for jumping in chat like you always do whenever you're able to make the show. Thanks for everyone who tuned in this morning to Twitch. It was a lot of fun, had a good time going through, gathering data, and organizing it to see if we found patterns in terms of winners at the Country Club of Jackson. So thanks for everyone who tuned in earlier today and followed on Twitch. James, appreciate the compliment there. Thanks for watching via Twitch. Thanks to everyone out there who watches and listens, supports the channel. Put it in the comments. What did you think about the data, especially like my mixed condition model from last year? Does that give you any value? If I show last year's mixed condition model and relate it to this year's and how I'm going to change, what are you thinking about in terms of wagers or DFS wise for the Sanderson Farms early in this week? Put that in the comments. And again, hope to see you on Twitch in the mornings. For all of the wagers that you've made so far this week at the Sanderson Farms, for all of the wagers you're thinking about making this week at the Sanderson Farms, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.